Well, I'd just like to say thanks for coming to the North East, Andrew.
It's a pleasure.
Thank you very much. Really great to have you here. I mean,
it's nice to come, and it's November.
Yeah. November. Yeah. But definitely not summer. Hottest.
It's not in the Midlands either.
Hottest June. What was it? Hottest June.
According to the BBC, every month's
BBC.
the hottest on record.
How are they going to get away with that? It's great to see you here, and I'd just like to say thanks from everybody in the country, by the way, about the heroic actions. I mean, I've been there myself. I know it's not a nice place to be, but hopefully over the next few years, you will be vindicated. You are vindicated. You're vindicated in all our minds and hearts. You're totally vindicated in what you said and how you've stood up for the people of this country. Done a fantastic job, and unfortunately, we've had a few issues in relation to.
Well, the establishment don't want it yet.
Yeah.
And the mainstream media are in their pocket, so we will have to wait. But I'm absolutely convinced that when I spoke out on the 13th of December 2022 to stop the government from authorising the vax for children under 5 down to 6 months, the last time the BBC interviewed me, they said to me, "Why are you sacrificing your political career on the hill of vaccine harms?" And I said, it's because that's the hill you're killing my people on.
Absolutely.
And I think history will be that my political career was not sacrificed on that hill, but the integrity and the public belief in the mainstream media will be. And that's why they're hanging on, because they're going down with that ship. They're as committed as the corrupt politicians, the mainstream media, and they're all going down together.
Absolutely.
No one's watching it anymore. People just are not interested. They know it's lies.
It is. It's absolutely horrific, and it was horrific the election result that you didn't get, that you should have. We saw the same shenanigans, let's say, in the North East, where it's starting to look pretty obvious that we've got these elections that, for some inexplicable reason, I mean, you only have to look at what happened in Northern Ireland, where there was some nefarious acts in relation to boxes being not arriving, not being delivered, etc. And it can only be...
The result in North West Cheshire was inexplicable.
Yeah.
Inexplicable. I fought, that's the 5th general election I've fought. I know what it feels like when you're winning.
Exactly.
They say I got 3.2% of the vote. They were the ballots that were counted, and I got 3.2%. But in the queue when I was voting myself, there were 8 people queuing, and in the car park afterwards, 2 of them came to me and said, "We just voted for you. We volunteered it." Well, I mean, at 3.2%, there shouldn't have been anybody else in a queue of 8.
Yes.
But we are where we are. And of course, if I were to challenge the result, I'd be a conspiracy theorist, wouldn't I?
Exactly.
But I am going to have to get some new conspiracy theories, because all my old ones have been proven right.
Well, I'm definitely going to give you some tonight. In relation to what's been going on in London with Mayor Carnage, I'll not give him his real name, I call him Carnage for a reason. He's committing massive carnage across London, the destruction of private business, all part of the globalist plan, and also what, unfortunately, I think I've caught them out with these, with what they call an ANPR vehicle registration camera system.
Automatic number plate recognition.
That's what they say it is, but unfortunately on inspection, and this is down to what I'm going to call British heroes, who are protecting the environment as well as their countrymen, women and children from what is demonstrably a dangerous technology. We'll get to the technicalities of it, and I'll show you tonight in the presentation. But most certainly is not a just.
But obviously, the election has happened, and the baton has been handed over from one World Economic Forum controlled leader to the next, seamlessly. Rishi's done his job. I mean, I don't believe for one moment anyone's so incompetent as to all the gaffes that he made during that election campaign. I think it's because they realise that the other arm of the Uni Party have got a leader who's very weak, not well regarded by the public in Starmer, and he needed every help he could to get across the line. And of course Reform have played their part as well. So you've got a Prime Minister who's got in with the biggest majority I've ever known in my life, with barely 20% of the public genuinely voted for him. And I think, as we joked about a little earlier off camera, that the honeymoon period of the Labour Party will won't last as long as their 15-minute cities. So it's going to be very brief, but he's clearly set out that the Agenda 2030 is going to push along with that, and he's straight over to the NATO meeting to reinforce the UK's unequivocal support for everything that's going on in Ukraine. And the public aren't being told half of this, so they don't realise we're being shepherded into a war with a superpower. And there's a lot of things going on in Ukraine that the public wouldn't be very happy about. And there's a lot of things have been going on in Ukraine. Again, if you've got complete control of the mainstream media, you've got control of the propaganda and the messaging, and that's what people are getting beamed into their living rooms every night.
Yeah, it's a serious issue when you've got a compromised media. I mean, we've seen that. I mean, I had it locally here when the government attempted to gag me 2018 for exposing the fact that they had installed on top of street furniture an illegal urban radar type data gathering type of equipment, which had some very nefarious parts to it, potentially pretty lethal, and failed in that attempt. So the courts who operate on fact, I mean, unfortunately, for these characters, these globalists, I think there's going to be some very, very upset judiciary when they find out that they've all been hoodwinked, because I've got no doubt that a lot of judges and barristers are unfortunately walking around exhibiting their own media access code address. That's going to be quite interesting. And we do have a number of cases in London in particular where, you know, where, like I said, we've had these heroes where they've removed some of this stuff. There's been a few tear-ups, let's say, with the local police, and there's a few court cases, and one in particular has just been pushed back to the middle of 2026. So it shows that they're really desperate not to get this information or this revealed in a court, which is always very positive, because it tells me they haven't got all the eggs, they haven't got all their ducks in a row. If they're terrified to take a court case like that into a court where we can present evidence that what's been deployed by Carnage is, as a matter of fact, some nefarious weapons system for the 15-minute city, and that's most certainly what it is, it's going to be quite interesting. So, you know, onwards and upwards.
Yes. On the media manipulation, I mean, in North West Leicestershire, I mean, I was cancelled from the moment I spoke out in 2022 about the vaccines, questioning the narrative about safe and effective. In the impartial media for the election campaign, my office was contacted 6 weeks ago at the beginning of the election campaign and said that I got to record a 15-second recording of my pitch to the people of North West Leicestershire, which would go out with the other candidates' addresses on the local BBC Radio Leicester programme about the election to promote turnout. So 15 seconds, that's just over a second for every year I've been a sitting MP. We recorded it, and they chased us for it, and I sent it to them. And what I said was that in 15 seconds, that my name's Andrew Bridgen, I've been your Member of Parliament for over 14 years. I was right about the Horizon Post Office scandal. I was right about the modern slavery in the garment industry in Leicester. I was right about HS2, and I'm now being proved right on the vaccine harms. And that last 3 seconds, they never ever put it out. They never put any of that 15 seconds out because they couldn't. That's the bias. I couldn't even pitch that. And regard to the vaccines, I've been asking the government repeatedly in the Chamber of the House of Commons to, if they're safe and effective, as they maintain, that they should release the record level data of doses, dates and deaths for the vaccine register in the UK, and 24 hours analysis of that data anonymised, and we'd know one way or the other. But they never would release it. We did get a third of the New Zealand data. New Zealand's got a population just over 5 million, and a whistleblower called Barry Young was maintaining a spreadsheet database of doses, dates and deaths and the vaccinators, and he was actually organising the payment of the people who were doing the vaccinating, and he knew the vaccine centres on his database, and he released that data. He's now facing trial next year and possibly 7 years in prison for releasing the data, but that was only a third of the New Zealand data. I can tell you now that hopefully by the end of this week the analysis is now complete of a full country's control level data. Stephen Kirsch, the analyst from America, has obtained all of the Czech Republic's data. He asked the Czech government, and they anonymised the data, so they took the names of the individuals off, they took the date of birth, they took the day of the month out and the month, but left the year, so that's okay for analysis.
Yep.
And he's got 10 million vaccination records and the date of death if applicable. I'll just give you a little snippet that it's not easy to analyse. There are many reasons why people didn't get vaccinated. Some people, many reasons, and some of those reasons might be that they were actually at death's door and very ill. But if you were to say that all the vaccines are safe and effective, if you were to compare the outcomes post-vaccination with different vaccines, they should all be the same, shouldn't they?
Yeah.
If you were 65 and you took a Moderna, or you were 65 and you took a Pfizer, if they're safe and effective, there shouldn't be any difference in the outcomes. If you use Pfizer as a control and say that that was safe, which I would maintain it's not, the facts are that in the Czech Republic, Moderna killed 50% more people than Pfizer did.
Absolutely.
From the records. And it's very interesting that that our former Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, refused to could not deny that his hedge fund set up many, many years ago in the Cayman Islands, Steele, acquired 11% of Moderna for a reported $500 million at a time when Moderna had never produced a successful product, and it was over a third of his whole hedge fund was invested in a company that never made a product that had ever sold. He must have had some foresight. But that Moderna is also the company which he, as Chancellor of the Exchequer, he favoured with a £1 billion grant from the UK taxpayer and contracts for 10 years for 150 million doses of these experimental treatments, which is a gold-plated contract for anybody. And clearly, if he has this interest through Thalim, a huge, enormous conflict of interest. But it's interesting that the contracts for these future vaccines, which have also been given out in Australia and Canada, are from the Czech data for the most lethal of the vaccines that were used.
Well, I know Moderna had a patent for this type of technology in 2015 and were pre-funded by the CIA and the DoD.
I've seen it was actually, wasn't it, it was a joint venture with the American Department of Defense.
Yes, it is.
Yes, which fits in with the data that I've been given, or the information I've been given, that both the development of the original virus, whatever that was, and it being moved to Wuhan, and the so-called vaccines, which you can't really call them vaccines, the gene therapies, they all came out of the same place.
Well, I think Apple and bioweapons, I'm going to go with Professor Francis Boyle.
Yes, Francis Boyle's...
if Boyle says it's a bioweapon,
well, he wrote the bioweapon
he did.
legislation, didn't he? Yeah, was it in 86?
Yes.
And he's given an affidavit to an American court saying that under the legislation that he drafted for Congress, the so-called COVID-19 vaccines fit the definition of a bioweapon.
Yes.
Because they're aimed to cause death and destruction.
Exactly.
And harm.
Well, hopefully we'll get that information into a number of court cases, because I'm assisting quite a few, and it's going to be a problem. It is going to be a problem for them. But I think in the meanwhile, obviously we've got this, what I'm pretty positive was a totally fixed set of events to bring another globalist puppet into control of the parliamentary process. And I think we need to start looking at deleveraging out of this particular system. One of the things that I encourage people to do is don't assist the offenders. That's whether it be through your local authority taxes, any taxes at all. These are deceptive systems where you're funding your own demise. Because these 15-minute cities that they're planning, they're using taxpayers' money to bring in basically a full domain scanning. It's like living in an airport scanner. You may as well be sitting in a scanner 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I mean, it's bad enough for people in vehicles where you've got a modicum of protection. What about pedestrians and cyclists walking past? You've got all this radiation, these high potential power radiation emitters right across. I mean, they've just blanket covered the whole of London with it. And we've got carnage basically turning around saying this is for the benefit for the environment. Well, it couldn't be any further from the truth. And the interesting part of it, they got Jacobs, one of the major defence contract companies, to carry out the environmental impact analysis. Must cost a lot of money. And that environmental impact analysis showed that there was no real benefit. The interesting thing that they missed was the radar, LiDAR, this fusion technology, battlefield interrogation technology. They totally missed that out. If that had been put into the mix, now, was it deliberate? Absolutely. Jacobs know what electronic battlefield weapons look like, they know what they smell like, and believe us, that's what's on those traffic lights right across London. And when the people of London find out what's really happened, I wouldn't like to be carnage. I wouldn't like to be any of them.
Well, no one in London can work out how he keeps getting back in.
That's another.
Well, as Stalin said to Winston Churchill, I think at Yalta, this democracy is all right, Mr. Churchill, but how do you know you're going to win? Oh dear. And what did Stalin say? It's you have to remember, it's not those who vote that decide elections, but those who count the votes.
Exactly. Well, the Russians must be watching what's going on in the UK and, you know, scratching their heads and going, you know, what, have these lots just been totally mugged off by these globalist puppets?
I don't know how we've got, you know, how we could ever go to a developing country in Africa or Asia or somewhere and start lauding it about, you know, how corrupt they are, or, I mean, the fact is, I mean, from my own experience, I mean, we're just so much better at hiding it in the UK.
I think we taught them that. Did we not teach them? Yeah.
Yeah, it is a bit of a shocker. I mean, Khan himself is worth about, I think it's 6 or 7 million on paper, it says. And it says he's made all his money from politics. Well, I mean, I can remember when he was an MP in the House 2010, 2015, before he was mayor. I mean, I think we were paid 65 grand a year at the time. I think he's probably on about 150 as mayor of London, maybe a little bit more. But I mean, that doesn't get you 7 million, does it?
Yeah, that's true.
And I'm pretty well in with the black cab drivers in London. They're pretty much fans, and they used to mob me. There was a cafe near where I used to have a flat near Parliament. They were always there. When I walked by, they'd always want to talk. And they did say that allegedly Mr. Khan, they alleged that he'd bought a £10 million property in North London. I mean, he's in Boris Johnson league at that, isn't he?
Well, I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, electric motors, I mean, they've basically forced these poor individuals to sit in a vehicle. The varying magnetic fields standard, maximum exposure to a varying magnetic field is no more than 30 minutes. Has any of those black cab taxi drivers been told that they're outside of the ICNIRP guidelines in relation to electromagnetic radiation exposure? And not only does it cause sterilisation, cancer, early sickness and death. I mean, we're talking about an immune system suppressor here.
You're talking about the new electronic cabs?
Yeah, the Chinese ones.
Yes, but they only run for about 150 miles on the battery. They're all running on generators most of the time in London. I mean, it's a bit of a con, really.
Well, it's more of a con. It's more of a sterilising the kids. I think that's the real plan about electric vehicles. I mean, forcing people them into them.
Well, it's these electric vehicles. I mean, you've got to feel sorry for people who bought one, haven't you?
Absolutely.
Really? I mean, I did go to Luton Airport the week after that one exploded in the car park. I mean, how can you insure them? Because when they go up, I mean, they just don't damage the car. They take the whole car park out, don't they? Or, I mean, that's why, as it Norse ferries going to Norway, that you can't go on them.
Can't go on them.
Can't go on them with electric vehicle.
Yeah.
Because they're not covered for insurance. A number of these car transporters have exploded, and well, I heard that if salt water gets on the battery, you can have a big problem.
Yeah. Well, I call them dirty bombs.
I mean, you wouldn't want one. You wouldn't want one in Clacton, would you?
Well, the lithium cobalt runoff, when they actually explode, the lithium cobalt runoff is extremely toxic and would cost millions to clean up. I mean, I think there was a time in London when there was 2 or 3 buses just blew up inexplicably within a couple of weeks.
There was one a week for quite a bit.
Well, the toxicity levels, the heavy metal toxicity levels in that area, you can't just clean it up. It will cost millions. They're like dirty bombs. And there's been no environmental impact analysis, no hazmat carried out. Fire services, emergency service workers go into those fires where the radiation emissions and the toxicity from the heavy metals travelling directly through their clothing because I haven't got special clothing equipment to protect them from it. It's been totally, I mean, all of this technology, you know, it was really concerns like the LED lights. You've went from, you know, 2,200 Kelvin, the orange lights, where we had right across London, you had this orange light. It was orange for a reason. It's less biologically active, less toxic. They've went to 4,000 to 7,000 Kelvin in street furniture. And we've got the aerial images of London. I mean, they're just blanket covered. Now, that is a category 1 cancer-causing radiation. So you've got cancer rates. We've got an epidemic going on at the minute. We've got people suffering major cataract issues, eye problems right across the capital. And it's all this technological deployment without any environmental impact analysis. So we've got Mayor Corn. He's very concerned. I've just listened to him recently. He's extremely concerned about this temperature increase. But he's blanket covered the whole of London with 5G transmitters emitting microwave radiation at levels of radiation that believe us London's going to get hot. It can get a lot hotter. It's going to get a lot hotter. But some of those radiation levels to the body, and especially in the sub-gig, which is the main blanket coverage for 5G, causes thermal temperature increases internally in the body and the dissipation of that. So Corn's talking about, you know, this problem with climate and temperature increases in the city. Well, now we know why. So I think we'll wrap it up there. But listen, once again, thanks very much, Andrew, for coming up and you know.
I'm looking forward to this evening.
See you tonight. All right.